Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of my former co-op where I have two guests and where we'll discuss game development related stuff. My guests today are Samuel deVos and Maarten Hof, and both are working for Ubisoft Massive in Malmo. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing very good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I'm good.
So, could you both of you give me a short introduction? What have you been doing your whole life now? How old are you guys? How did you get into Ubisoft Massive? Yeah, did you study or something like this?
So I started studying game development when I was about 18 years old, and then I studied game development for about 3 years, and then the last 6 months of those 3 years were an internship, and I got to do my internship at Ubisoft Massive. And how I got my internship was a pretty long story, but it basically came down to talking to someone on Facebook asking if I could
I heard the
get an
story and it's
internship.
really long. It's really, really
Yeah.
long.
Apparently, my portfolio was sufficient, and that's how it happened.
Okay, so what about you, Martin?
Well, I went to university, and I went there because I wanted to do things with music because I play guitar, and at that time I was also singing. But during my studies, I found 3D and game art super interesting. So I was focusing more and more on that until eventually I made the decision to focus full time on game development
Okay,
and my goal to become in a AAA studio.
okay. So,
And
how long are you at Massive now?
I've been at Massive for about 2.5 years, I think 2 years and 8 months, something like that.
Okay, okay,
and I'm at Massive for 1.5 year now.
okay. So it's like 1 year apart. You started. Did did both of you guys had to do an artist to get into Massive?
No, I did an art test to get into Massive, and with Maarten, they were a bit more convinced apparently.
Yeah, I didn't do
Okay,
it.
so maybe we can talk about this more, Samuel. Can you give me some do's and don'ts for the artists? Is something you would tell young guys who have an artist ahead of them to what to do and what to do not?
Yeah, so it was actually not my first art test I did. I had been applying
Okay.
for lots and lots of companies, so I think it was my third or fourth actual art test I completed. And I think the thing that struck me the most was that you really should be enjoying your art test. So whenever you get an art test and you don't really feel like doing your art test,
Mm-hmm.
or it seems a bit boring, then it's not really a good idea to agree with doing the actual art, because usually when they give you an art test, it's very similar to what you're going to be doing on a daily basis at the company that you're applying for,
Yeah.
which was very true in my case. I still do the stuff I did for my art test at Massive every day. So, and I remember turning down art tests because it was not really my thing. So I think that's uh, the one thing that I would tell someone that's about to do an art test. And then maybe something else is usually when you're applying for your first job and you're trying to do an art test, you usually have a lot of other stuff going on at your school. Maybe you have finals or maybe you have other assignments. And what I did after a few artists is I realized that I should really, the most important thing is like getting your art test done. And for me, that took the high road over doing my actual assignments. So I would always actually make sure that I pass my assignments because, of course, I want to have my diploma at the end
Yeah.
of the day. But then I always made sure that I just did whatever was sufficient for my assignments. And then I tried to, I wouldn't get the same grades that I would have if I didn't have an art test. But then I would spend any extra time on the art test. And of course, teachers are very comprehensive about that. And they know that it's about getting a job and that's what you're studying for. So I wouldn't be afraid to cut down a little bit on as long as you pass and you reach your goals, as
Okay.
long as you put enough time into your actual art tests.
So, how long did the artist take?
The one for Massive, I think it took me about 4 or 5 days. I think I
Okay.
got a week for
Okay.
the art test, but yeah, I think I completed in about 4 or 5.
did you come up with any plan to? So did you say, "Oh, I gotta do this now. I gotta do," or did you just start and get things done?
Yeah, I think that's how I basically did it. Of course, when you get the art test, it has some guidelines. You try to make sure you get through those first.
Yeah,
And then when
because
you eventually
yeah,
start, it's very dependent on what art test it is. If you're modeling a prop, then your workflow is going to be a lot different than when you're doing some set dressing. But in general, you just try to focus on what is asked and try to get that done. And if you want to do any extra stuff, it's like a thing that people often think is that you need to put in think way out of the box and make your art test twice as big as you think it's supposed to be, which is really not true, because whenever people are judging art tests, usually just look at what they asked you to do and then how you perform. And if it's extra good, then that's enough
hmm
thinking out of the box. Then if you would make a mediocre scene that's twice as big.
okay, that makes a good impression. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I also heard that sometimes companies give too big artists on purpose, too big art tests,
hmm
because
hmm
then they can see where you really start to focus on when you have a deadline where actually there's not enough time for the art test itself. So you have to focus on the things they want you to focus.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And also, I heard a tip from a friend that he said, even if you don't make the complete artist and you have some ideas for other stuff, but you can't work on that stuff, just write them down and give them some sheet of paper where you say, "Oh, this would what I've made if I had more time," like this.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's a question that also comes up in interviews for companies. Like, if you would have done everything differently, or if you had one more week to work on this, like, what would you work? So
Yeah.
it's good to know like what you can spend more time on. Maybe what were your strengths and what were your flaws in your artist, so that they at least know that you have good judgment for your own work.
Yeah. So Martin, I saw on your ArtStation portfolio that you won some of the ArtStation challenges. So could you tell me some benefits for
Yeah,
beginners taking part in ArtStation's challenges? What are the benefits of the pros and cons? Yeah, just go ahead.
yeah. So the benefits of challenge, yeah, you really become part of the community, because I learned to know a lot of artists there. I got to know a lot of artists. You give each other feedback. You learn to give feedback. You learn to receive feedback. And for me, the main thing that I learned from it was to plan my projects so I could actually finish them. Because when I start with a challenge, I start with the idea that I really want to finish the challenge as well.
Okay.
And I wrote some down for this. Hold on. Yeah, so you learn to work with a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing in the industry. You get your name out there. People see what you do. As I said, you meet people and you show potential employees uh, how you work.
And that you can work under time pressure. I guess this is a really, really big benefit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you,
Because there's you have 2 months to finish a challenge. So
yeah,
you work on the, and it's the same thing with the artist. So you really want to focus on the things you need to focus on.
And I actually remember when Maarten finished the first art, the one that he won.
The
yeah.
challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the challenge. I think it was the week after that. Me and a colleague at Massive suggested that that Maarten would come to work at Massive because we saw his portfolio,
Ah, okay,
Mhm.
okay.
and then apparently I didn't know that somebody else recommended it as well. So when I went to recommend Maarten, Marie was like, "Oh yeah, this guy's been recommended to me before, like a
Ah,
couple of days earlier," and then we both were like, "Yeah, he won the ArtStation challenge." So that's you definitely get a lot of eyes on your portfolio if you actually manage to win something or get some sort of a prize, or even if you just have decent work,
yeah.
which will never go unseen on an ArtStation.
No, because I can tell you when there is a challenge, our whole team is watching it, and I just looking at who's there, who's out there, stuff.
yeah.
And I think it's the same for other studios. Because it's just one public thing that people can.
Yeah, I think that's a topic about that, or the artists talking in the lunch breaks, something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, that happens. And we also sent them to each other. Oh, did you see what this guy did, or how it looks?
So when are you doing an environment on your free time, or at your job? What are you preparing for? So is there any preparation you do, any research, any how are you handling this stuff?
That depends on if it is a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Then then I try to scope it just in 2 months. But when I do something outside of a challenge, just for myself at home,
Yeah.
then I have a rough idea in my head, and I just start modeling and putting stuff together and see how it goes. And then if it doesn't go well, then I start a new project. And usually I have some leftover assets I use for other projects, and then I put them in a new project. And that way, you also build up a library for yourself where you can make new environments with.
Okay, so you would say some kind of library is not that bad for people.
No, no, especially when I started, my models weren't that good, so I couldn't reuse. But at this point, I'm making models, and I don't think they. Of course, they will get better, but they're on a certain level now that I can reuse them all the time for my projects.
Okay.
So when I have a new project, I take models from my older projects and put them in the new project, and of course make new stuff for it. But that way, you can really cut down on time.
Okay, so how does some kind of library look like? So what is in there?
For me, and I made a folder structure in Unreal.
Okay.
I put everything in there and named everything according to how I wanted to name it. Then I got the same shaders on, so everything is basically streamlined now.
Okay.
And I put them all in one scene, and then I can just have an overview of what I have there. And that way I can pick and what I want to put in a new project and what I need to make. Because also sometimes I don't want to make a new environment, but just want to model something. So I just start to model a barrier or a traffic barrel or something like that. And then I can put it in for future purposes.
Samuel, do you have some kind of library too, where you have some templates lying in there, and you say, "Oh, I got this one, this one, this one. I can use for the next environment."
Yeah, I definitely don't. I start sometimes I projects, but I don't think I've ever completely finished an environment outside of work.
Okay.
I think I get enough satisfaction on a daily basis for what I can handle by working at Massive. So usually when I get home, I try to
zone out.
zone out, get a bit of other stuff done.
Okay.
Go for a swim.
Yeah, that's completely
work on,
completely
something
understandable.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I do think it's definitely an advantage, especially if you're getting into the industry, that you have a lot of stuff in your portfolio. And even when you're in the industry, I think it's also an advantage to have some stuff on your portfolio that is not professional work that you just work on at home, because it kind of goes to show like how deep your interest goes, and it shows that you can handle your stuff on your own, because usually everything on a personal project is managed by yourself and there's not people involved, unless you use Megascans and stuff, but still it's on a different level than posting something that you've done in an actual company. So I think it's very nice to have stuff to work on at home. It just depends, if you're Maarten or if you're me.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a preference. Who is?
Yeah.
It's some kind of a work lifestyle balance, something like this.
Yeah.
So Samuel, how much stuff did you have in your portfolio when you started at Massive? When I go through your portfolio, I only see one project which is not professional. So this was the project who got you the job, right?
Yeah, that was the only thing. I had some more stuff on
Okay.
that I've hidden by now because it doesn't really hold up. But the only thing they really looked at when I got hired or when I was applying was that specific environment, because that's really the only thing that applies to the other stuff that you see on my portfolio, which is level art and level decoration. So that was the only portfolio piece that I was really judged on, which is a good tip. I mean, it goes to show that you only need one good piece for people to give you a chance. So it's not really worth having a ton of pieces if they're not up to the quality that one of your pieces is. Then
Yeah, they really bring it
somebody
down.
will not even look at them. It just doesn't show your best qualities.
So you would say it's quality over quantity, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've heard of interviews where I have for a job, and then they keep on talking about a specific portfolio piece that they're really proud of, but then maybe whoever is taking the interview only wants to hear about another piece that they're not talking about, which they feel like fits better with the company. So it's also good to really know, like, whatever you're applying to, what portfolio piece talks to them the most, why did I get this interview, and then you kind of know where your strengths are for a certain company.
Okay. So what would you say is really essential for a environment artist portfolio piece? When you say, like, let's take your scene now, which I have here. What would you say of yourself did bring you the job? Why?
Yeah, I've actually asked my the guy that, and I think the actual quality, like the details and stuff, are definitely not what got me the job. I think what got me the job was the small amount of storytelling that's in there, which really goes to show that I want to put in some effort towards storytelling. It's obviously not the greatest. And then besides that, I think the biggest factor was the composition of some of the shots really appealed to whoever was looking at my portfolio. And then it's more about potential if you're looking for an internship rather than anything else. But I guess there needs to be, one of all the things. There's details, there's storytelling, there's actual technical stuff. There needs to be one of those things that people think, this guy stands out. He's really good at this. He needs some more work. But there's definitely potential. And that's talking about like an internship, right? Because you're willing to take more of a for an intern than you would be for an intermediate or senior position.
Yeah, completely understandable. So, Martin, you learned Unity, and Samuel, you learned Unreal, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
how is it now to get one? I think you will have in Ubisoft you will have the Snowdrop, right? It's Snowdrop.
Yep.
How is it to work with this engine now and not with Unity or Unreal? Is it really different? Did you have to learn something new?
It's a lot different, but
Okay.
my because it's so focused towards whoever's working in it. It's so customized to whatever team is working in it, be it animation or be it environment or the character.
And also to the project itself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really like tailored to what we need exactly. While Unreal or Unity is a lot more based on whoever's willing to buy it or whoever's willing to use it, like anywhere across the world, be it environment artists, whatever. So it's very universal. There's a lot of documentation to go through for everyone. Okay. And there's, and usually you're on your own. You're looking at YouTube videos or you're sitting in a classroom with a teacher in front of you, and then you're working in a company. There's like however many people around you that are doing the exact same job as you. So it takes you like maybe a week or 2 weeks to get like, at least for me, after 2 weeks, I was already like really comfortable with the engine, which is a huge plus.
Yeah, we all keep saying we want it at home.
Yeah, we all keep saying we want to make portfolio pieces in it, and they're completely fine with that, but we're not posting it anywhere.
Yeah.
So Martin, how is it for you as a Unity? I think it appeals like the same. It's that Snowdrop is really tailored for your needs in the company, right?
Yeah, but there's also a lot of similarities because in the end, the real-time is a real-time engine. So if you know the principles of how real-time rendering works, then I think you can work in any engine.
Okay. So you both have been on a university, right? So I think you have some guys at Massive who are self-taught. So could you give me some kind of comparison between guys who are self-taught and guys who come from the university?
I think there's a few people at Massive that are self-taught, and I think the main difference would probably be maybe people who come from university or from college are a lot more like generalists because in your orientation year or whatever you call it, the first year, you got a lot more generic courses. I mean, I got programming in my first year, 2D art,
Animation.
anything really, yeah, animation. And then when you're self-taught, you usually like eventually you end up at a job you're most interested in, and so that comes from studying whatever you were most interested in. And I think if you look back at like all the courses that I did, for example, when I was studying at uni, there was probably like one course every semester that I would have gone through if I was like self-taught, that I would have looked up on YouTube. So I think when you're self-taught, you're a lot more specifically tailored to whatever role you have, depending on what kind of. But I think in general, that would be a lot more. You wouldn't have done any courses that are, man, I'm really not looking forward to teaching myself how to do programming. And I mean, then you don't do programming.
Okay, so how about you, Martin? Are you more the guy who would learn by himself, like 3D modeling?
Yeah, I think so. Because I didn't go to a game.
Okay.
I went to a university that's basically tailored to multimedia. So it's more like advertisement websites, but also more like serious games. So we did a lot of research on what works and what doesn't work instead of learning the tools themselves. So I did a lot of learning on myself at home. And that's also why I didn't have an animation class or a 2D class.
Okay.
So I think I'm more self-taught than at university.
So for both of you, would you do it again to become a self-taught artist, or would you become a university artist? What would both of you guys do if you could do it again?
That really depends. At this point in my life, I really don't want to go back to university. But if I was like 19 or 20, and I didn't yet figure out what I really wanted to do, then university is definitely a good place to be at that point in your life, because you get to know a lot of people, you get to learn a lot of stuff if you go to the right school, and you get to figure out what you want to do.
So how about you, Samuel? Would you go to university again, or
Yeah, sometimes I miss university because the whole vibe is so cool and everybody's all, the only thing that you're thinking of is your assignment. Going, thinking, I gotta have this done tomorrow, and then when that's done, I gotta get this done. And then you're talking about that when you're drinking in some bar and working on your stuff. And I think for me, it was very valuable to, for 3 years, be around people that have the same interests. And I'm not saying that I missed that before, but it's nice to have that, while you're in that constant like,
fellowship?
Student environment. Yeah. And then if I would have gone back and be self-taught, I think it would take me a lot longer to go through the same stuff because I'm really the kind of guy that you have to, be behind with like a,
Like do
like a
your
torch.
stuff.
Do whatever. So if somebody would have told me like, okay, I'm gonna force you to do self-teaching now, then I would probably spend a lot more time scrolling through Facebook than I have when I was going through university. And I think the whole fellowship that you go through when doing university is for me totally worth all the courses that might not sound as interesting. But then on the other hand, I'm really thankful that I had the chance to do 2D art, that I had the chance to do programming. All of that stuff, it still helps me on a daily basis. And then if you're lucky to be in a country like Belgium, well, even the Netherlands compared to some other countries where education is pretty cheap, and I think, it's not a hard decision for most of us.
So, do you have any overall advice for ongoing environmental artists who want to make it in the industry? Is there some basics you really need to have when you want to go into the industry? Not just art wise, maybe just character wise for yourself.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is also if we're, it's just being a nice person
Mm-hmm.
and just I mean you got to be yourself in any case. But if you know yourself and you know how an interview and stuff like that, that gets you very far. I mean, I think there's a lot more people that get hired because in the case where okay, their portfolio isn't like super strong, but I think they're really nice at the team on a social level, and he's really like interested in everything and enthusiastic. I think that happens a lot more than the other way around. Okay, he's really skilled, but he's a douchebag. I don't think
Yeah.
that ever happens. At least not at massive. I don't think that's a very common. So I think your odds are always really a lot higher if you're just a nice guy, really enthusiastic, and you really want to learn more. And eventually that'll lead to you being a better artist as well, because you're learning that a douchebag would who already thinks that he knows everything.
Yeah. Basically comes down, don't be a rock star.
Yeah.
And don't be
At least not in
English.
Sweden.
No.
You're working in a team with lots of people, and you really need to be a team player, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's in the end of the day, you're gonna spend however many days a year with the same people around, constantly talking to each other and running around in the office trying to get a hold of people. So if everybody likes you and you like everyone, your daily life is a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Is there something you did have to learn the hard way when you entered the industry, which you said, "Oh no, I didn't think about that," but now it's just like that, on a personal level?
Well, when I work on myself, I basically want to do all the fun stuff in the beginning
Okay.
and just do that. But working in the studio and with a team, you really need to think about the big. Maybe art direction is not there yet, so you can't do the fun stuff yet. So you have to wait and you have to do boring stuff first. And that really, when I started my first job, Massive is not my first job in the industry, but I first had an internship at a studio in the Netherlands, and that was I learned that the hard way, because then I could just throw away what I had worked on and I'd start over again because art direction changed or something else changes.
Okay. So what about you, Samuel? Is there something you had to learn?
I think, yeah, it's similar though. The from what you're doing in university is that you're working on a huge project, you know, and it obviously takes a long time to develop a trip. So there's so many, let's say you're making a personal project and you don't really like making a block out or something, or you don't really like doing everything that's not detail, then you'll maybe be, having to work through that for like a week. But then when you work on a AAA game, you might be going through that for 3 months. So, then you have to sort of like take a step back and just accept that, this is all part of the process. And then eventually, at least I can really, enjoy myself through a lot of steps in the process, because you kind of, look for how to make everything a nice, a nice stepping stone on the level. But obviously, some stuff is more fun than others. And then the other thing I think is on a social level that, when you're in university, you get feedback from your teacher, do whatever you want with it, and then you get grades. But if you work in such a big team, people will, sometimes tell you what to do, or sometimes you'll have people, have to go to other people and talk to them, like, okay, we need this to happen, and vice versa. So the whole team dynamic, in a good way, is very different than what you do from a university, because you're not really used to working with any professional, because kind of doesn't really know what they're doing when you're studying. So it's very nice to come into a big company and to have, when you come in at first, everybody's more experienced than you. So it's a very interesting dynamic to get used to, working with other people that sometimes have the same job, sometimes have a completely different job that you don't know much about, but you still have to learn how to work together and get to know what every team does, especially if you're somehow related to that team. So that's the social aspect of it is a very interesting part.
So Martin, as you having worked on, I think you were at smaller studios, right? So was there a huge difference for you to now be in a really, really big studio with lots of people in it?
I think you're falling away again.
I'm falling away again. Can
Can
you
you
hear me?
repeat the question? Yeah, I can hear you now.
So as you having worked at smaller studios before, I guess. So and now working for massive.
At one smaller studio.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how is it? How is it to be now working in a bigger studio?
Well, first of all, I really get to focus and don't have to do shaders or have to do a lot of prop art
Okay.
or other stuff that's not level art. So I really get to focus on one thing, which I really like. Plus, the team I was working with is just as big as the open world team now is. So it
Okay.
was, and that was the whole studio back there. So as Sam was already said, the whole instead of I mean, for example, you need to talk with tech art. Then in the other studio, I had to talk with one guy and only that guy. And now I need to talk with the team. And maybe there are different guys doing different stuff, and I need to talk with more people. So yeah, it really is just on that level.
So my final question is, why did both of you want to become a game developer? Is there something, Martin, you talked about music. Is there something you else would have strived for? Or did you say as a kid, I want to become a game developer one day?
No, I definitely didn't say that
Yeah.
when I was a kid. No, actually, I wasn't really gaming when I was younger.
Okay.
But when I discovered 3D, then I really saw it. It for me, it sounds cliche, but it's kind of magical that from nothing you create something, and that really stuck with me. And then for me, it's really building worlds. I really just like to build worlds where you can walk in and get immersed.
So how is it for you, Samuel?
Yeah.
For me, also never when I was younger. I used to be a very casual gamer. I played a lot of like Call of Duty or FIFA with whatever my friends were playing.
Okay.
So there was nothing special going on there. And then eventually, when I was at some convention, when you're 18 years old and you go to a convention about what you're doing for the rest of your life, I found this one booth that was about how to make, and then like I was like, whoa, making games sounds a lot cooler than playing games. And then I sort of got into it that way, and it took me a while to realize that I wanted to actually do that even after I discovered that it was a thing. But then eventually the choice was very obvious after some time that was for me. And I think the thing that I like about it, that you have, even if you work in a huge team, like it doesn't really matter how big your team is, at least in level art, you have so much chances to build like your own stories, even apart from everyone above you. There's always room to put in whatever you want to do, even if it's as small as tipping over a chair and putting some have cigarettes on the floor because someone had to or do whatever. You really have a chance to be very creative on a small level and sometimes even on a high level. So that's what's the appeal for me.
So did both of you, or are both of you still playing games, or are you just making games?
We only play The Last of Us.
Yeah.
You only play The Last of Us.
That's our favorite game.
That's your favorite game.
But when I started making games, I also started playing more games.
Yeah,
that's definitely true.
It's a thing you can't avoid when you're making games. Start making games, I guess.
For me, when I started making games, I stopped playing games.
No
So
time for that.
nah, but I think it was I started playing. So I think the last game I played before actually starting to make games was the Division, because I played like a couple hours before that, but then when I realized more, and then I played through that, and then I got the job. You really, at least I didn't really long for any more gaming experience after that. And then everybody always told me The Last of Us had this great story, and then I was trying to get into that for. And then what I did, I started up the game, and then staring at this wall and looking at like some texture, brick texture on a chimney that had a scheme there or something. And I was like, well, I'm focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah, we all did.
And then I took a break for a year and a half or something. And then Maarten told me again to start playing this. And then I played, and then I kind of, built the habit of not doing that anymore. Maybe, I kind of learned to just look more at the story in the game. And then I played through The Last of Us 2 in 2 days, which was so much fun. It was probably like the best story I've ever, not even like watched or like played through, just like a genuine great story.
Okay.
And I'm not like a narrative kind of person, so I might be, but I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
And I think that's the game I finished. Then after that, I finished Spider-Man, and then of course I God of War. I skipped out on God of War because my roommate was playing it when I got home, and so I kind of saw what the game was about. It's not really my thing, but I might end up playing it later. And then after that, I played. We had this discussion today.
Oh yeah. Okay.
At work, where somebody started playing The Last of Us. The PS4 that he borrowed from Maarten, and then he's gonna quit playing The Last of Us because he wants to start on God of War. And me and Maarten were both like, "What are you doing?" She totally The Last of Us.
Yeah, but he just sent me a text that he's now playing.
That's nice.
Okay.
Yeah, and then of course when we do, then I even bought a new graphics card just to play the Division because I was really so forward to it. Blasted through that game in like a month and a half, otherwise, in like a day. And it was so much fun. It was very tough days at work because you spend a lot of time playing the game.
So how is it to play your own game?
It can get tough sometimes because there's a lot of stuff I have played, but then every once in a while it's fun to through areas and be like, oh, it's nice to see what Maarten did here, or it's nice to see some of your own stuff in. Finally get a good look at the narrative
and also
of the game,
music,
because that's something that we don't touch with on a daily basis.
But also when we build the levels, we don't hear the music soundtrack in the background. So we actually play, then you hear it together with the music, and it really starts to come together there, and you're like, well, super cool.
Yeah, and it's so cool to when you finish the game and the story, and it's like, how did we not know this story?
Yeah.
I think it's a game development illness when you start playing games again, that you're analyzing all this stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, definitely. Every game I play, I stuff and did certain render things or everything.
I would love to turn that off,
Yeah, it's hard.
It's really, really hard. So guys, I thank you so much for being on my show. It was really nice.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It was a good time.
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope we hear us again, or maybe Samuel, we see us again at the Game Developers Conference.
Yeah, maybe we'll see if
Making games. It's called Making Games, right?
Yeah, we'll see. I think that's in October somewhere.
Yeah, it's in October.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see if I get there.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay. Take care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
too.
man. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you. Bye.
Bye.